What would you do if you woke up at midnight to discover that the person sleeping beside you wasn't entirely human? We live in a world where everyone carries secrets. We wear polished masks in public, hiding our flaws, our anxieties, and our deepest scars. We tell ourselves that if the people we love saw what lay beneath our surface, they would run away in fear. But real intimacy isn't about perfection. It's about the courage to stand by someone when all their masks fall away. Pull up a chair. Let me tell you the story of David and Elena, a couple whose quiet marriage faced a mystery stranger than anything you could imagine. David was 34 years old, and he was a high school biology teacher in a small town tucked into the misty pine forests of western Oregon. He was a grounded, patient man who loved his routine. His wife, Elena, 32, was an illustrator. They had met 10 years earlier during their freshman year in college, and for 5 years of marriage, their life together had been harmonious. They had date nights every Friday and shared jokes across the kitchen counter. There was nothing wrong with their marriage. Or so David thought. The trouble began 6 months ago. David woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to an empty bed. At first, he didn't assume the worst. Elena was a light sleeper. He figured she had gone to the kitchen for a glass of water, or stepped onto the porch for fresh air. But then it happened again 3 nights later, and again the following week. Warning signs began to emerge. David noticed that every time Elena vanished from bed, the comforter would be stained with wet, black mud near the foot of the bed. You can wash bedsheets a few times, but after a while, the ground in soil leaves a permanent mark. Whenever David asked her about it while tossing the sheets into the washing machine, Elena's response was always the same. "I don't remember, David," she would say, her voice quiet. "I must have been sleepwalking." At first, David thought she was pulling a prank. But when he saw the genuine panic in her eyes, he grew concerned. "Sweetie," David said gently, holding her hands, "it's a little hard for me to believe you don't remember walking around barefoot in the mud. Just talk to me." Tears would immediately fill her eyes. "I am telling you the truth, David. I do not know." As weeks went by, her late-night absences grew longer. As her body prepared for its semi-annual regeneration, her hormonal signals intensified, drawing her instinctively toward the forest. David began intentionally pretending to be fast asleep just to time her. One night she was gone for 2 hours, another night 3 hours, once nearly 4. And then David noticed something even stranger. Every single morning after she returned from the dark, Elena looked transformed. Pimples she had the day before would be completely gone. Dark circles under her eyes cleared up overnight. Her skin looked unnaturally smooth, radiant, and porcelain-like, as if she had aged backward 5 years. The breaking point came on a cold Thursday afternoon. Elena had a mishap in the kitchen while chopping vegetables, slicing her left palm open with a chef's knife. It was a deep, nasty gash. David was certain she needed emergency stitches, but Elena panicked not because of the pain, but because she was terrified David would witness the cut heal in real time. She insisted on bandaging it herself and locked the bathroom door. That night, at 12:30 in the morning, David felt the mattress shift. He heard her soft footsteps scurrying toward the front door. The heavy oak door clicked open and shut. She returned 2 hours later, crawling back into bed with cold, muddy feet. The next morning, David grabbed her left hand while she was pouring coffee. He unwrapped the bandage. The deep gash was completely gone. Her palm was seamless, smooth pink skin, without even a faint scar. When David pointed at her hand in total disbelief, Elena tried to convince him that she had never cut herself in the first place, calling him stressed and paranoid. That was the last straw. David decided right then that the next time she got out of bed, he would follow her. A week passed before the opportunity arrived. It was 2 o'clock on a foggy, rainy night. David felt the bed springs pop. He heard her footsteps hurry down the hallway. The front door opened and shut quietly. David grabbed his dark rain jacket and boots. He reached for his phone, but the battery was dead, so he tucked a small flashlight into his pocket and slipped out the front door into the moonlight. When he reached the driveway, he caught a glimpse of her silhouette at the edge of the dense pine forest. Elena was running into the woods at an unnatural speed, agile, fast and completely barefoot. She moved through the pitch-black trees as if she had taken the path 100 times before. David sprinted to keep up, his scientific mind fighting against a rising sense of dread. Ducking behind massive Douglas fir trees to stay hidden, he listened to the rain dripping heavily from the canopy overhead, soaking the muddy forest floor. They ran deeper into the wilderness for nearly 2 miles before Elena finally slowed down. First to a jog, then to a brisk walk. She glanced around the shadowy trees, scanning her surroundings. David pressed himself flat against a large tree trunk, holding his breath until his lungs burned. She kept walking, and David trailed 50 paces behind. That's when David started noticing her clothes, scattered along the wet forest floor. First a sweater, then her pajama pants, then her socks and undergarments. She was stripping off her clothing with every step as she walked deeper into the woods. Finally, Elena reached a wide, secluded clearing surrounded by ancient pine trees. David ducked behind a thick boulder, and for the first time that night, something other than his wife grabbed his full attention. Hanging from the pine branches and scattered across the muddy ground were dozens of strange, translucent husks. They looked like discarded snake skins, except they were shaped precisely like human bodies. Some hung limp from high tree limbs like hollow mannequins. Some were half buried under autumn leaves. Dozens of empty human shells littered the clearing. David stifled a gasp, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He looked back at Elena. She stood in the center of the clearing under the pale moonlight. She began making an eerie, rhythmic clicking sound from the back of her throat, a muscular reflex designed to loosen the outer layer. Her head tilted toward the sky, cocking back and forth in sharp, mechanical jerks. Her knees bounced up and down, her entire body trembling in a rhythmic convulsion. With every bounce, her outer skin began to loosen. Flakes of dried skin the size of pine cones began peeling off her arms, chest, and face. The sound echoing through the quiet forest was unmistakable. It sounded exactly like heavy Velcro being ripped apart. David felt an overwhelming wave of nausea. He gripped the stone boulder, his knees shaking so hard he could barely stand. Elena kept bouncing and flexing her joints until her entire outer skin peeled away in one complete, hollow husk that sloughed off onto the damp earth. Beneath the old skin, her new body glowed fresh, smooth, and utterly flawless in the moonlight. Elena cracked her knuckles and rolled her shoulders, taking a deep, relieved breath. "Ah," she sighed, stretching her arms high toward the sky as if she had just finished a long workout. David's foot shifted on the slippery mud. A thick pine branch snapped beneath his boot with a loud crack. Elena's head snapped toward his direction instantly. David froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. She stepped out of the shadow of the trees, her eyes searching the darkness until they locked onto his face. David's lips quivered. He couldn't move. His instinct screamed at him to run, but he stood rooted to the spot in sheer terror and disbelief. Elena stared at him, her wide eyes filling with tears as she pulled her discarded sweater against her chest. Her face was pale with embarrassment and fear. She stepped forward, her voice trembling in a whisper, "Please, David, not here. Let's go home." They walked back to the house in total, heavy silence. For 2 days, David couldn't sleep or eat. His mind replayed the image of those hanging husks over and over again, questioning his sanity and wrestling with horror. He sat at the kitchen table staring at the wall, unable to look at Elena without shaking. On the third night, Elena sat across from him over 2 untouched mugs of tea. Her hands trembled violently as she looked down at the table. "I've never told anyone this in my life," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't look at me like I'm a monster, David." David swallowed hard, forcing himself to reach across the table and touch her hand. "Tell me the truth, Elena. Those husks in the forest, they belong to my mother, my grandmother, and my aunts." Elena confessed softly. "That clearing has been our family's sanctuary for generations. We belong to an ancient lineage that regenerates our dermal layers twice a year to maintain health and heal injuries. My mother passed away when I was young, and I'm the last one left. I was terrified that if you found out, you'd leave me." David looked at the woman he loved, the woman who had shared 10 years of his life, supported his dreams, and loved him unconditionally. He realized that while her biology was unique, the soul inside her was the exact same wife he had cherished since college. It took time for David to process the shock, but from that evening on, their marriage grew stronger than ever. David stopped judging by the surface, and Elena never had to carry her secret alone again. My friends, what are you hiding behind? What secrets or fears are you keeping buried because you're afraid of what people will think? Your mask might be a secret, a fear, or even something you think makes you a monster. But true love doesn't run from the truth, it sees past the surface, accepts you for who you are, and stays by your side through every single layer. I'm Grandpa Ben, and this has been Grandpa Ben's Story Hour. Thank you for sitting with me today. If you needed to hear this, subscribe and join our storytelling family. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and don't be afraid to show your true skin.